All right, our announcements for today, and for those tuning in on via Facebook, we want you to be aware of this. Be sure and check out, if you have not, the newsletter from Jim and Lynn Shingledecker Wheeler back there on the board back there about the Wycliffe Bible translators. So be sure that you read up. They do a lot. And then remember, if you have suggestions, drop some suggestions in the suggestion box. If you tuning in on Facebook and you have some suggestions, send us an email or a post or a comment on the Facebook post there. All right? So, we're going to be looking at a passage of Scripture today in Genesis chapter 35, and our title for today is The Functional Family. The Functional Family. I'm sure over the years, you've probably heard the phrase, the dysfunctional family. You ever heard that? The dysfunctional family? Well, I'm here to tell you, most of us families are dysfunctional. I'm not sure if there's a functional family, it's a rarity. All of us just have some things in our family that if other people were to look in, they'd say, wow, that's a dysfunctional bunch. However, as we look at it, we feel like we probably function pretty well under the circumstances. So, most families have flaws. I know that's a shock to you. We're going to look here in Genesis 35 at a family, and we're going to talk about this family, and most of it is in the scriptures that we read. Some of it is the background and future. But we want to see this dysfunctional family. And we're talking about Jacob. Now, last week, I believe we talked a little bit about Jacob. Well, today we're going to continue just a little bit here in chapter 35. Let's begin, well, first of all, let's begin with this thought. And I want you to allow this thought to be part of your thinking today as we examine Jacob and his family. And here's what I believe we'll see from these verses. God's purposes are not hindered by human failure. Boy, get that in our minds. God's purposes are not hindered by our failures or flaws or faults or dysfunction. But oftentimes they are advanced through our failures, faults, flaws. Now let's look at Jacob and let's consider his family. Let's read these scriptures. Genesis chapter 35. We're going to begin with verse 16. Now remember, there's a lot that's happened prior to this. We read some of that or talked about it the other day. And there's a lot of things that happen after this, but this kind of right in the middle here. And they journeyed from Bethel. Now remember, we talked about the fact that God had came to Jacob at Bethel and again emphasized the change of his name and character at Bethel. They journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath. And Rachel, Jacob's wife, travailed, she's giving birth, and she had hard labor. Verse 17, and it came to pass when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. You're going to have this child. Verse 18, and it came to pass, as her soul was in departing. So here, Rachel's life is departing, leaving. But in her final words in her final breath that she called his name Ben-Oni. Ben-Oni. But his father, Jacob, called him Benjamin. Now this is the 12th son, by the way. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And if you've been to Israel, you probably, on the way into Bethlehem, saw the monument, shrine, whatever you want to call it, there going into Bethlehem of where Rachel's tomb is. Verse 20, Jacob set a pillar upon her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave unto this day. Verse 21, and Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the tower of Edar. All right, we got that. Now verse 22 is just kind of a statement that is thrown in here. And it came to pass, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel, Jacob, heard it. Okay? It's all is said there. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. Verse 23, the son of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. We just read about brother Reuben. Simeon and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar and Zebulun. Those are the sons of Leah. Verse 24, the sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin, and the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali, and the son of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Padan Aram. Okay? Got that. Now, verse 27. And Jacob came unto Isaac his father, unto Mamre, unto the city of Arba, which is in Hebron, near Abraham and Isaac, near where Abraham and Isaac sojourned. And the days of Isaac were 180 years. I know some of you feel like you're that old, but not quite. And Isaac gave up the ghost. He died and was gathered unto his people, being old and full of days, and his son Esau and Jacob buried him there. Now let's talk about this family for a little bit. You know enough about Jacob and his family, you could hang that title across there, the dysfunctional family. My goodness. You know, start with Jacob. Who he was, his character, his name described him until God said, I'm making a change. I'm changing your name from Jacob, which means con man or a trickster, a deceiver. I'm changing you to Israel, a prince with God. But he had his character. Tricked his brother out of the birthright, tricked his brother and father out of the blessing. What a guy. And of course, you know enough about him that his family, my goodness, you know, he goes back to his in-laws, and his uncle is, or whatever he is quite the character himself, and tricks him, and you know, he wants to marry Rachel. She's the beautiful one, but the father substitutes Leah, and you know that story, and good night. And then, and this is kind of what we're centering around here, we come to, and I'm going to use this word, we come to I guess the plural of crisis is crises. Is that correct? The plural. We come to the crises of Jacob's life, what we've just been reading. The word crisis, you familiar with that word? The word crisis? It means, according to the dictionary, an unstable or crucial time with the possibility of an undesirable outcome. I think we use the word crisis a lot in today's world. Do you see that word fairly often? Newspapers, TV, crisis, here's this crisis, here's that crisis, you know. I've got a hangnail. Oh my, it's a crisis. Okay, that's getting a little far-fetched, but anyway. Now, this may not mean anything at all to you, what I'm about to tell you. It's kind of a little story. My mother was big on crossword puzzles. Any of you work or do crossword puzzles? Good, good. They're supposed to be good for your brain. Yeah, they're supposed to be good, for, for memory and stuff like that. I piddle with them occasionally. The ones you find in the paper, they cover a lot of modern stuff that I don't know anything about, so I'll buy a puzzle book once in a while. But I do how do you say that? Sudoku? Sudoku. I always get my O's and U's messed up. I do that. And that's supposed to be good for your brain. So, I'm trying. So my mother used to do crossword puzzles, and I'm talking about, this was in the 60s. Now, I know most of you don't go back that far, but this was in the 60s. And she had this book. In fact, I still have it. She has this book of synonyms. And she had 2 or 3 other little things that she would use to, help with these crossword puzzles. Well, this book of synonyms, I got it. She gave it to me. I don't know how I ended up with it, but I've kept it over the years. It was published in 1947. Now, I know that's before a lot of you. Well, most of you. 1947. A book of synonyms, okay? The word crisis is not in that book of synonyms. Now, again, this may not mean a thing to you, but to me it kind of spoke. They didn't use that word a whole lot back then. And we've progressed. We've come up to where everything is a crisis now. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in. Here's some crises, the crises that Jacob faced. We just read about on their trip to into the land of Israel. We saw where Rachel travails and dies, but the son is born. Now, this is just one of his problems. We talked about how he was before. We talked about what his father-in-law did to him. All of these things that took place prior to this, and now on his way back to the land of Israel, this beautiful wife that he loved dearly dies in childbirth. Now, we read when she died, she names the son, she comes up with the name Ben-Omi. And it doesn't say it there, but Ben-Omi means son of my sorrow. Son of my sorrow. I can see her saying that. I can see her naming this. This is the son of my sorrow. But Jacob comes along at the same time and changes the name to Benjamin, which means the son of my right hand. Or in other words, the son of honor, the good son. This is the son of my right hand. This is the son of honor. So right here. Now, we're not laying blame anywhere for this, what happens. But in the midst of this sorrow, Jacob is able to see some beauty in it. He looks at the son who to Rachel was the son of her pain, her travail, her sorrow. And it was definitely a pain, a sorrow to Jacob because he loved Rachel. He worked for her for 14 years. Worked for her little tricking father for 14 years. He loved her, and she dies. There is sorrow there. But out of that sorrow, he sees hope. He sees a future. And so he names him the son of my right hand, the son of honor. And so, right there, And there's sorrow in our families of all kinds, some that are no one's fault, some that are someone's fault. But out of that sorrow, God can produce hope and a future. Now, let's go a little further. Verse 22, now here's another crisis he faces. No explanation as to why, but his oldest son, Reuben, goes into the handmaid of Rachel's handmaid. Rachel's died. I don't know if this was a political move, a power move. I don't know what it was. But that had to be a stab in Jacob's being. His oldest son does this to him. Goes to Rachel's handmaid. And, and basically that's all that's said about it. And he finds out about it. You talk about a dysfunctional family. Here your oldest child just stabs you in the back, does something unbelievable to try and hurt you and harm you. I don't know children in your life. Hopefully they've not done that. But there are families out there that face that. Now, let's go a little further, because we're going to see some more crises that he faces. He names the sons. Okay, in verse 23, he names the sons. Now notice, the sons of Leah. Reuben. Well, Reuben now has disgraced himself. He's kind of out of the picture. And then Simeon and Levi. Well, if you go back, and we talked about this, I think, the other day, where they tricked this people, the men of Shechem, and then they kill them all. These two are the guys responsible for that. So they're kind of out of the picture now, because Jacob wasn't happy with that. And so the firstborn was Reuben, then Simeon, Levi, and Judah. So now Judah has risen to the preeminence here because of the treachery of the other three older sons. What a dysfunctional family. What a bunch. You say, what's so important or impressive about Judah? Well, in Genesis chapter 49, I believe it is, Genesis chapter 49 and verse 10, Jacob is kind of pronouncing blessings on his sons. I say he's pronouncing blessings. He's kind of describing what they're going to be. And so here in chapter 49 and verse 10, he talks about Judah, this son. The scepter, the ruling rod, the sign of power and authority and of rulership shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. That's Jesus. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. That's what allowed Jacob to make this prophecy, this picture of the future. Reuben's messed up. Simeon and Levi have messed up. Judah, fourth in line, God's going to bless him and bless that family. Now, I will say this, Judah is not perfect. Judah is not completely innocent. If you go back, if you read chapter 38, I believe it is, Judah is the one that says, let's sell Joseph to these people. Let's sell him and trade him, get rid of him. But God says, I'm going to use this. You see how sometimes God takes things that fail, even in our families, even in our lives, and He's able still to accomplish His plan and purpose. All right. Well, then chapter 36, which I did not read this, gets into the death of Isaac. Esau and Jacob come together and bury their father. And another crisis in his life. A lot of things that he could point to and say, man, I have a dysfunctional family. The point is, this story is not over here. With Jacob, with all his failings, with all of the failings of his sons, we've been reading in 1 Kings, studying the tribes of Israel and how they split and had king over the northern kingdom, king over the southern kingdom. All of the kings of the northern kingdom were bad kings, and yet God still worked through that. You and I may not be perfect. You and I may have a flaw or two here and there. Our families may not be perfect, but God is able to bless in our families in spite of us, and God is able to continue His story in our lives no matter what happens. And here's the key. God is not seeking human perfection in our individual lives, in our family. He's not seeking perfection. He's providing His grace in our lives. His grace in your life. Now, I don't know about your family, your situation. I'm sure maybe some of you were the black sheep of the family. I don't know. It's possible. But God's grace overshadows that and can use you. Or maybe there is a black sheep in your family. Maybe there is a dysfunction somewhere. God is able to work beyond that in spite of the dysfunction. And we talked here about the functional family. The functional family is the family that has the Lord Jesus in that family in their hearts. And they're seeking to serve God in spite of their weaknesses, in spite of their failures, in spite of their sins. And God, by His grace, is working in and through their lives. Now, people on the outside might look and say, what a dysfunctional bunch. But God's not through yet in your family or anybody's family. His grace is still working. And the truth is, out of our wreckage, now, I don't know if any of you have any wreckage in the past. Out of our wreckage, His plan, even in spite of our wreckage, His plan cannot be stopped. Amen. He's going to keep working and accomplish His plans. We sometimes look at the Bible and we talk about these great men of God and women of God in the Old and New Testament. And we read the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, and we call that the heroes of faith. And we look at their lives and we realize, hey, you know what? They were just like us. They made mistakes, didn't do everything right. And you know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The real hero of the Bible is God. Because no matter what we do, He remains faithful to His promises to us. And we're part of that family. Now, some people might look on this church and say, man, what a dysfunctional bunch. Well, they've never seen us in action, have they? They've never seen us come together for families and different things. They've never seen us allowing God to work through us, and none of us taking the credit but praising God. So we're part of the family of God.